Coming to you from the greatest city in the world, this is the #1 showbiz podcast. It's Talk for Two. Here's your host, Matt Bailey.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much, Gary. Welcome back to day 3 of week of 100. And as always, thank you to Axtel Expressions and the Tangent Bound Network. Go check them out. Go support them, please. Today, we have one of my favorite comedians. Now, when I announced his name, I think I broke the internet just a tiny little bit. I'm not too sure, but I know everybody loves this guy. Bill Engvall is with us. Of course, Engvall came to fame touring with Jeff Foxworthy, and later he catapulted to superstardom with Foxworthy, Larry the Cable Guy, and Ron White as part of Blue Collar Comedy. But don't call him a country comedian. While he's proud of his roots and involvement in that genre, Bill thinks of himself, as do legions of his fans, as a middle American, clean comedian. Now that's important because we talk about what happens to comedians that get categorized in a genre, and it's a very open and honest conversation. He knows the audience. He knows you guys are listening. So we talk about respect for stand-up comedy and so much more. I do not want to waste another second. Here now, making his podcast debut with us, our interview with Bill Engvall. Mr. Bill Engvall, welcome to Talk for Two. How are you today, sir?
Well, I'm doing just fine. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for being here. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Hey, I've been looking forward to this. I'm glad we finally got it together.
Yes. We've been, planning this for like a month. This is great. I'm excited. And because I've been such a big fan for many years, I know you probably have told this story numerous times, and I know my listeners would love to hear it again. How'd you get started in comedy?
Oh, man, I wish I had some great story for you. It was quite by accident. I was in college. I mean, I've always been a fan of comedy ever since I was a kid because my dad always had Bob Newhart albums around, and so I would listen to those. And in college, I became a big fan of Steve Martin. In fact, I remember the first comedy album I bought was Let's Get Small, and I listened to it a few times, and listened to it for the laughter and stuff, at the jokes. And then I thought, wow, that's really cool that he just gets up there and talks, and people laugh. Yeah. But that was about all I thought about it,
Yeah.
Like I always wanted to be an actor. I never thought about being a comedian.
Yeah.
So, I was in college at the time, and I had discovered women in beer, and studies went out the window. So I moved back to Dallas, and I was working as a DJ in a nightclub when they opened up a comedy club in Dallas. And one night, me and a buddy of mine went just on amateur night just to watch. And, a couple rounds of liquid encouragement got through us. And next thing I knew, I was on stage and talking about just living in Dallas and stuff about Dallas, and people laughed. And I thought, this is really cool. And I came off stage, and the lady who ran the club asked me if I wanted to be the house MC. And I said, this is where I was in my life. I said, what's it pay? And it paid $25 a week more than I was making at the nightclub. So wow. I said, sure. And, that was back when guys like Seinfeld and Shandling and Leno and all these guys were doing what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
So basically my job was I picked them up at the airport, emceed the show all week, and then dropped them back off at the airport on Monday. So I got to learn from the best in business. And but I still never thought, this is what I was going to do. I thought this will be, a cool hobby. Let's say it fulfilled all my job requirements. I could work at night, drink on the job, and sleep in late. So it was a great job.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, but that was, so I just thought, well, I'll ride this as long as it'll go, and then I'll probably go back to find a corporate job somewhere.
Yeah. I find it's interesting. I find that people who do strict stand-up as opposed to variety arts like magicians and other prop acts, they always tend to come to comedy a little, I don't want to say later in life, but in their young adulthood, whereas it's not so much a fascination when they're a kid. Why do you think it took so long for you to get that bug and get up on stage?
Oh, I guess it's either naivety or ignorance. We moved. My dad was in the public health service, so we moved a lot. And, I wasn't really a jock, so it was the way you made friends was you became the funny guy.
Yeah.
And, but I never thought that would parlay into my job. Well, that I'd be doing the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And I think I also, Matt, I think I had to do some growing up. I don't think I really gave comedy the respect it deserves early on. I wonder sometimes if I had, if I'd been further along than I am, or if it just played out the way it's supposed to. Because I've had a very successful career, and I know a lot of guys would trade places with me right now. But so I sometimes I don't like to second guess it, but I often sometimes wonder, what would have happened if I had moved to L.A. Earlier on in my career, as opposed to hanging in Dallas for 2 or 3 years doing it at the same club. Mm-hmm. But then again, those 2 or 3 years really kind of cemented my style, and I learned how to write bits, and and I learned from the guys that were out on the road at the time.
Yeah, and you've stayed clean, which is something I absolutely love, and it's the first point you make when little Bill Engvall pops up on your website, and I love clean comedy. It's so rare. Why clean, and more importantly, why are we getting away from clean?
Well, for me personally, why clean is I don't think I knew early on. I'm sure if I could somehow get hold of some tapes of me early on, I was probably dirty, because that's what you thought. That's what you knew to do.
Yeah.
But then as I matured and grew older, I realized that I looked at guys like Leno and Newhart and unfortunately, even Cosby, personal life aside, and I thought, what's the common denominator here? And it was that they all worked clean. And so I started working clean, and the next thing you know, I got passed over for every HBO one night stand that ever came up because they said you're not edgy enough.
Yeah.
But now I've outlasted all those people that had those one night stands, and people. I think people like the fact that A, they know it's going to be funny, and B, it's going to be clean. Listen, I'm not Disney on Ice. I'm not trying to sell anybody that.
Right.
We talk about real life stuff, and but I tell young comedians this: you can talk about whatever you want. You just have to do it in a clean way. I mean, I've got an audience range from 85 to 15.
Mm-hmm.
So. And I think that people appreciate that. They know it takes a little more effort to write a clean, funny joke.
Yeah, the people appreciate it, but it seems like it's really, really hard in the industry to get you were talking earlier about giving comedy the respect it deserves. It seems like it's hard to get the industry people to respect clean comedy, but they don't because they don't listen to the audience.
Agree. Yeah, I mean, listen, I've got guys that I think are really funny that are. They're industry sweethearts, Louis C.K. and Kevin Hart, but I couldn't do my show the way they do them. Mm-hmm. And so I think sometimes you kind of got to say, all right, what's going to pay my bills more, and what do I want people to remember me by? And for me, I just feel like it's and I don't put this on anybody else. It's because everybody has to have their own style, but. For me, just that clean works. Although I've often joked that the last show I ever do will be the dirtiest show I've ever done in my life, and I'll say everything I've ever wanted to say on stage. But I don't even know that that'll happen because I don't think it would fit. I think people would look at me like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
Because now I'm known well enough that they know what I do, and so they'd be like, "Wow, what happened to you?"
Yeah, and it's great, and I think it was Here's Your Sign that was number 5 on the Billboard country charts. How do you, this is another thing that you can only talk about with certain comics, how do you put not only clean comedy as a style of comedy, but how do you define a genre when you're going to release a record? That it's country comedy.
That's a great question. I'm going to tell you that what happened with Here's Your Sign, basically, at that point in time, country was huge. Mm-hmm. And CMT was doing these comedy videos that would incorporate country stars.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of, I think they made a huge mistake by getting away from that because a lot of artists, singers, they want to show another side of them other than just, hey, I can sing a country ballad,
Yeah.
So I think it was just what it was at the time because I am by far, listen, I don't consider myself a country comedian by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, when I hear that term, what conjures up a visual in my head is a guy in overalls shooting on a piece of grass going, well, I don't know why the tractor won't start, it's and that's not what I do,
Right.
I just do everyday observational stuff, but I just think it was at the time, it was the easiest. And also, we're going kind of dovetailing back into what you said about cleanliness. Country, you had to do that, and so the mainstream, MTV and VH1 and all that. I wasn't edgy enough for them. Mm-hmm. But country, it fit right into. But unfortunately, what happens then is you get that country genre. That he's a country comedian. Well, no, he's not. It's just, I think it's more comedy for the country. But it's so I think at the time it was the way to go for me, and it was really the only outlet I had for getting my name out there.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you say that, because in my research I noticed that you hosted something that had to do with Minnie Pearl, a Minnie Pearl event. You were the gala MC for it, and so it's interesting that you don't consider yourself, and I don't either. Don't get me wrong, I don't consider you
right. No.
in that same realm of Minnie Pearl, but certainly a descendant of that style. And I think you and Jeff and Larry and Ron, you created the next generation of that with Blue Collar.
I agree with that. I think Blue Collar really did kind of, while it was hugely popular in the country genre, but it was also really popular with just the working class people. Mm-hmm. And like that was why I was glad we didn't call it country something. It was just blue collar comedy, which that covers everybody from New York to Seattle and back. So yeah, I mean what you did with like the Minnie Pearl stuff and the Andy Griffith interview I did. Those were, and I don't want this to sound like I didn't care.
Right.
But those were just vehicles to get your face out there.
Oh, yeah.
And again, it was the country, they weren't calling me to go interview Eddie Murphy, which I would have loved to have done.
Yeah.
So you kind of took what you could get at that point. And then I just, after Blue Collar finished up, I made a concerted effort to really start making a lot more mainstream, but still standing by my guns of being clean and being funny.
Yeah, how does one do that? How do you shift from niche, let's call it, a niche area to a mainstream area? What was your process in your writing?
Just to keep everything relatable. I think, listen, country comedy is very funny, but if you're not country, you don't get it. Mm-hmm. And that's why, and that's not just country, whether it's being African American or being Native American or being Southern or being the Boston comic. Those are all fine, but I wanted the big picture. So I thought, well, the way to write my material is right where it's not regional and not ethnic or anything in that sense, that it just could belong to anyone. Because I honestly do believe this, that we all do the same stuff. It's just with different accents and different tones.
Oh, now you're tempting a conversation on originality here. That's let's get into that. I mean, so where is that line with originality for you? If you're saying we all do the same stuff, obviously very original take, very original setups and premises. But how much of it is, can a guy say, "Oh, you stole my joke," versus no?
Oh, well, that's going to be an ongoing battle.
Yeah.
I think somebody told me one time there's only 7 original premises.
Yeah, I've heard that too, yeah.
I tell you, I have a friend, Rich Scheidner, who's a very funny comedian. Mm-hmm. And he and I were working together one time, and I was opening for him. And we had a lot of bits that were a lot alike. And he said something to me that I'll never forget. I said, "You want me to stop doing that?" He goes, "No." He goes, "You got your outlook, I got my outlook." And I think that's, now, obviously if I'm doing his joke word for word,
yeah,
then you go, wait, something's up. But if it's just about like talking about having kids or what it's like to go through pregnancy with your wife or whatever, everybody does that. They get married and has kids, so it's just your outlook on it. And so, I've never been one. I've always had this theory that like some comedians go, "Oh, if you play guitar or you do prop acts, you're not a comedian." Yeah. My theory is your job is to make them laugh. However you do that, if you can pull it off, then you're successful. Then you're comedy's comedy, whether it's music comedy or whether it's pratfalls or whether it's straight stand-up. It's just different versions of being funny. And I think sometimes people get too hung up on being the comedy police, Now, obviously, if someone's up there doing a "here's your sign" bit,
yeah,
well, then they're going to get called on it. But I'm not the first person to talk about stupid people making stupid remarks. I mean, that's what comedy is all about.
You just
So
set it up.
I don't really worry too much. Yeah, I don't worry unless they're doing it word for word. I don't really,
Yeah, well, that
But I will say this: that on that same note, I don't. One of the sad things about that is I don't watch other comedians very much, and I hate that because I love comedy, but I don't want to watch someone and then 2 years down the road go, "Ooh, I got an idea," and it's something I saw but just forgot that I saw it.
Yeah, I hate when that happens because it's totally unintentional, and then somebody points it out to you, and it's like, oh, I didn't mean to do that. But it's inspiration. It's kind of an osmosis process.
Right.
Yeah. So you mentioned Here's Your Sign. We got to get into that. What made you, talking about, having the ideas, but doing them differently, what made you say, this is how I'm going to present this material?
Well, the bit used to say that I thought stupid people should be slapped. And then one day, my wife, of all people, said, you don't look like the kind of guy that walks around slapping people. So I was at the Funny Bone in Omaha, Nebraska. I'll never forget this. And that was when you were there for 6-7 days. Mm-hmm. And I just came up with this idea of this sign that just said, "I'm stupid." Yeah. And that way that people wore it, you wouldn't rely on them, you wouldn't ask them anything. And it just, they hooked into it. It's funny because I get young comedians all the time asking me, they say, how do I write a catchphrase? And I always tell them, I go, you don't. I go, the audience is the one that picks it. I mean, I didn't think that sign bit would be the one that everybody would hook into. Mm-hmm. And of course back then, Jeff had the "You Might Be a Redneck" thing, and but I didn't sit down and go, "Oh my God, I got to write a catchphrase."
Yeah,
it just happened.
Yeah. So how did you know? When was the first inclination? Because I remember listening to an old record of yours, and you didn't tag each bit with "Here's your sign." You didn't do that initially, and that kind of evolved, and that turned into the catchphrase. How did you know when the audience wouldn't let you go without hearing those 3 words and hearing that bit?
It was a real weird transformation for me because, Here's Your Sign kind of became the "Where's the Beef" of the 90s.
Yeah.
And I remember one day being in a grocery store, and I was just in line, and there was a couple of people ahead of me, and the checker was having a problem with something, and she called the manager, and he goes, "You just push this button here," and he went, "Here's your sign." Mm-hmm. And he didn't look at me or, hey, wink, wink, look what I'm going to do, I went, oh my God.
Yeah.
They're saying it just because they like it, and it fits, And so that's when I knew that I go, this could be pretty big.
Mm-hmm. And it has been.
But as far as, and I'll always do them, it's kind of like Don McLean not doing, Bye Bye Miss American Pie. It's like,
yeah.
And people say, "Are you going to keep doing it?" Yeah, I'll keep doing it. But it's kind of become, like this latest special I just taped. It's really 5 minutes at the very end of the show, and I think I would have an easier time of getting away from it than say Foxworthy would.
Yeah.
Because it became so huge in his, the Here's Your Sign album. I mean, it had gone platinum and was number 1 on the country chart, and he just had number 5. But then like albums like Dorkfish and there was another one, That's Awesome. They also went gold and platinum, but the Here's Your Sign wasn't the main. It wasn't in the title, so that when people bought it, they didn't really know.
Yeah.
Whether it was going to be on there or not. And I think that's the perfect mix. It's like, I enjoy doing them. They're harder. Hard things to write, it's those things.
Really?
Because unless you really see it happen, it's like I had a book of them, but, I got to tell you, it was a real task to come up with a book of them.
Well, I think that...
as opposed to, God, I wish I'd have written You Might Be a Redneck, because, you could, those are... you see books out there. You might be fat if, you might be New York if, you might be blah 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 if, so that's a big wider scope than just people doing stupid stuff.
Well, you kind of answered my next question, but to hit it directly, what about the people that would come up and probably bend your ear and tell you their own "here's your sign" stories? Do you ever kind of do like an audience card thing, or just tell the stories that you hear?
Oh yeah, I get people come up to us all the time. The problem is I have a real high standard about how funny they have to be.
Yeah.
I don't want to put them on stage or on an album if they're just so-so. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, they're cute, but they're not like what I would go, ooh, there's a winner.
Yeah.
Once in a while you'll get one. I'll say, hey, can I use that? And if they say yeah, then I'll put it on there. But the other problem is you don't want to put one on an album and have some guy come and go, hey, I wrote that for you. You owe me so much money. So I'm like, all right,
Yeah, that's why some places don't take unsolicited ideas and stuff. It can get hairy, but I don't see your fans doing that. I really, really don't.
No, they're all pretty cool about it.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was, what was great for me, I think probably one of the greatest things for me early in my career was when Foxworthy took me out on the road with them. This was before Blue Collar.
Yeah.
And I was opening for him. And I learned more from that man than from a lot of people because he was all I really had to compare myself to because he just went astronomical. I mean, just blew everybody out of the water. So I really, he took me out of the clubs and into the big theaters and arenas. And you have to do your show different there. And I honestly believe that if he hadn't taken me out on that stuff, that I don't know that I would have. I mean, I probably would have gotten it eventually, but it sure was a help. I'll tell you that.
Do you prefer arenas or comedy clubs?
I prefer theaters, like performing arts theaters, like 2,000-seat theaters.
Yeah.
Because every seat's a good seat. You don't have waitresses and 20 you and your buddies yuck for $1 coming in. They don't really give a damn about the show. And there's things I miss about the club days. Like, my group was probably one of the last groups that had a real camaraderie amongst other comics. Because we lived together. We stayed together, we worked together, and nowadays, from what I understand from people I know that are in the club, they said it's a whole different world now.
It's awful. It's awful. I did an open mic.
Yeah, and you're having to drive to gigs, and it's like, it's just slap a mic up, and and I got really lucky, in my timing about that. Comedy was peaking in the '80s, and that's when I was out there, and so the arenas are great because the money's huge.
Yeah,
but at some point somebody's just watching a screen. And I always feel like comedy is very intimate. Everybody has to be in on the joke.
I'd feel like there's a lag time too.
There definitely is. I mean, you got to, and that's where I learned from Foxworthy a lot of was, take your time because you got to tell a joke and it's got to hit the back wall, and they have to react. You might be 2 or 3 jokes in before that. They're going, oh wait, slow down. You're going,
Yeah.
And in the club circuit, a lot of times. It's just comedy survival, It's like, you know what I'm talking about. Like,
absolutely. Yeah.
I always get people ask me, they go, well, how do I become a comedian? I say, here's what you do. You go up on a midnight show on a Saturday night when nobody gives a damn who you are, and they're drunk, and they're drugged up and stuff. And if you can make those people laugh, then you got a shot at it.
Yeah. It's really tough. It's tough, and I find
I tough all the time. If I had to start over today, I don't know that I'd make it.
Well, the club scene is different. The club scene fell apart. I get told all the time, do open mics. I won't do them. It's just a room full of bitter comics. It's really tough.
That's generally what it is, and it's. And I think unfortunately the reason it fell apart was because the club owners all of a sudden went, well, wait a minute. If I'm selling out my rooms, why do I need to pay these big acts to come in? And so what happened was you started getting acts up that weren't ready for the headlining spot. Or I remember a story one time. I'll never forget this guy as long as I live. I was working in St. Louis at the Funny Bone. It was a Saturday night. It was a midnight show. And this guy had been busting my chops all week about how he usually headlines. And, he just took this middle act because he wanted to get into the clubs. So the midnight show rolls around, and the club owner came to me and says, "You want to get out of here early?" I said, "Hell yes." He said, "All right." He said, "Do 20." He said, "Do 30 minutes. I'll have the middle act do 10, and we'll get the opener to do 5." And the middle act goes, "I don't want to do 50. I don't want to do my whole act." And I looked at the club owner and I said, "You know what?" I go, "He usually headlines everywhere." I go, "Let him headline. I'll go up and I'll do the middle spot." And the owner goes, "You sure?" And I said, no problem. And I went up and for 15 minutes just gutted him because all I had to do was pick out the 15 minutes of the best shit I had.
Yeah.
And he got buried. And I didn't do it on, it was more of I didn't do it to be mean, but I wanted him to learn a lesson that just being the headliner doesn't mean you're the last guy up. You got to be the best on the show.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember going up in Houston at the Comedy Works on their just regular nights, and dude, you'd be up behind guys like Bill Hicks, Sam Kinison. Yeah,
Wow.
I mean, so you had to, it wasn't like this. Let me lob you a softball. It was like, so I learned that if you're gonna end up the show, you're gonna have to be the best on the show.
Yeah.
And I hope he learned because like I said, I didn't do it to be mean, but it's like you need to learn the lesson here that it's not just I'm not getting the most money because I got the most time.
Yeah. So then the question goes, what is the marker between an opener, a middle, and a headliner who can do theaters and arenas and kill? Because, I mean, I was, just the other night, I was watching Them Idiots. It's on Netflix. A little plug for anybody who has Netflix to want to watch Bill. And you just kill. You come out, you're the first one out, and you just kill. What is that marker between opener, middle, and when you can headline larger rooms?
Well, I think in that case, and Jeff and I talked about this when we were doing that with Larry. Larry's audience is a lot more raucous. It's as close to a rock concert as you're going to get in comedy.
Yeah.
People screaming and yelling and belly button and it's like I don't want that crowd.
Yeah.
I want my crowd to sit and listen. So it was like and I also think though at that point, it was like it wasn't about ego anymore. It's just like let me just do my time. I'll give it my and I do and Jeff obviously has a huge number of when we started Blue Collar, Jeff was the only one that was drawing tickets. Trust me. But by the time Them Idiots came around, we were all pretty much even as far as drawing tickets. So it really didn't matter. But like what I always say in the club circuits and stuff, like for me, the delineation between an opener and a middle is just it's experience, it's having the time, and being able to obviously then the middle and the headliner that line gets a little fuzzier because there was a lot of guys that I like went whew. Yeah. Man, I'm going to have to bust it tonight because, you get some guy up there who's doing 30 minutes and he's just killing. I remember there was a guy named Paul Kelly who I got sent down. He would work this club for 6 weeks, which was unheard of, but he just kept getting held over. Wow. And so they wanted somebody else to come in and headline, but he got a standing ovation as the middle act. So it was, what do you do?
Well, that's tough. Well, I'm sure you killed it. I'm sure you went out and did great.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I held my own, but it was like, but then again, it's happened to me versus, I was working in Austin, working for a comic that I just loved. His name was Dennis Wolfberg, probably one of the funniest guys out there. But for whatever reason, he was having an off week, and the club owner switched us. And, and I felt bad. Because, Dennis was my friend, but what do you do? I mean, the guy goes, look, I can't have him closing the show. People are walking. So, he was going to bump my money up. So at that point in my life, I was like, well, do what you got to do. I mean, I could use the extra money, that's for sure.
Yeah. Is it tough among comic friends that are at that level when that happens? Does it hurt the relationship?
Yeah, because, especially if you don't really know them, because they're somehow, comics are a very insecure breed.
Yeah.
Hence why we do this. It's as I always tell my audience, you're keeping me from paying $75 an hour on a psychiatrist couch. Yeah. Because I get to go out and vent. So there is this little insecurity amongst comics, and they take it personal. If you're a baseball player and you're in a 0 for 40 slump, guess what? You're not going to keep putting in the lineup.
Right.
So. Yeah, I do think there can be some animosity there, and you hope it doesn't last. You expect it, but you hope it doesn't last. And you hope that whoever's booking the show is smart enough to go, okay, like I would never follow a band. Yeah. You're just an idiot. Well, follow a band or a kid act, you're dead.
Yeah, well, I want to ask this, and if this is something if this is a tough thing to answer, how did you guys, work that out then with Blue Collar? Because I don't look at it as like, oh, Bill's the opener, Jeff's the middle, and Larry's the end, or Ron's the end. Did you guys always switch it up? When you're at that level, there's no such thing as an opener, a middle, another middle,
Right.
and then a headliner. It's a four headline show. How'd you guys work that out?
I honestly believe at Blue Collar, the lineup literally went with experience and ticket draw. Jeff would obviously headline because he had the most fans at that point.
Yeah.
And my Here's Your Sign had just come out, so I had the second most. And then Ron and Larry just they could flip-flop, back and forth because they were, even though I've known Ron forever and he's been doing it a long time, Jeff and I had the bigger exposure. We were the ticket draws.
Yeah.
And so, but then, what was funny was after Blue Collar 1 had such major success, then you got into a little bit of like, all right, now what do we do?
Yeah.
Because, Ron and Dan had started to make their own mark in the business and had a huge number of fans. But the way, I think really what the second year around, when the second album came out, it was more like, this works, let's just leave it the way it is.
Yeah.
So, but what we did was we kept the lineup the same, but what we did was we evened up the time. Mm-hmm. So like everybody did like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
As opposed to the first one where Ron and Dan, I believe, both did 10, then I did 30, and then Jeff cleared it out, but it was one of those things like, it's working, let's don't mess with it.
Yeah. Yeah, because like I said, it's just not. It's a totally different thing than the club situation of an opener, middle, and headliner. But it really worked, and I'm curious what you hope. This is almost a two-parter question. What you hope Blue Collar's mark on the art of comedy will be going into the future, and what you see already that it did for the art.
That's a great question. What I hope is that, I don't know, 10, 20 years from now, people will still talk about it. I get asked all that. I mean, we've been done now for almost 8 years.
Yeah.
And people are still asking if we're going to get back together. I hope that because I was fortunate enough to be part of what I honestly believe will be the last big comedy tour. Mm-hmm. I don't know that it'll happen again in that sense.
Yeah.
Just because of something we talked about earlier about the camaraderie of comics, and people saw us as four good buddies that just hung out together and decided, hey, what the hell, let's take this out on the road. Mm-hmm. And that was what we portrayed to people, and that's what we were. And to this day, we're still all friends. We talk, and I visit with them. I don't see them very much just because of locales.
Yeah.
But and I think what I hope that we did to the comedy world is to say that, look, we were one of the biggest tours to ever hit this country in comedy, and we kept it clean. You didn't. I know that there's one out right now with Lopez and I forget who else is on it. But
Yeah,
I hope that
sure. Yeah.
I hope that people remember us as being not only funny, but that we kept it clean and that the whole family could come see the show.
Yeah, and that's important, and I think we need to get back to that in comedy. It's just, like we said at the top, it's kind of the...
Well, I tell you, you're right. I'll tell you a great example of how I think where comedy's gone, and I think it's down a bad road, is, they try to do these roasts again on TV.
Yeah.
And you go back and you watch the Dean Martin roast, they weren't cussing and swearing and just disgusting material. Yet you watch these Comedy Central roasts, and it literally has become who can be the dirtiest.
Yeah, you almost can't watch it because you can't get the jokes because half the stuff's bleeped out.
Yeah, it's like, I remember the ones we were involved in, it was bothersome. I mean, it was like, it was like when they were roasting Jeff, it literally turned into a blue collar roast. But it's like, first off, they roasted him in New York, which I think is idiotic because that's not where he's from.
Yeah.
And you just had guys and girls up there just trying to out dirty each other. And I remember we kind of looked at each other like, wow, this isn't where I thought this would go.
Yeah.
And I think it's sad because I think you could do those again. Just tell them to say, look, it's got to be TV clean.
Well, is that Comedy Central? Because they have a reputation for just going for the guys that they can bleep out the most, which they kind of veered off of that.
I think there is that, yeah. I do think that there's part of that. I think it's because you get young people running the networks who think that's what it is. And my argument would be like, well, I don't see your stuff, like if you rerun something, I don't hear people talk. Like if you hear Andy Griffith rerun, people watch it.
Yeah.
But you don't hear people going, oh my God, they're doing a comedy marathon of comedy roast on Comedy Central. I got to DVR that,
Yeah.
I think everybody loves a good dirty joke, but I don't think people want to sit through an hour and a half of it.
I don't either. You're right. It's
because you start thinking, well, can you do anything else?
Yeah, it's almost. I remember.
And it's not that some of the stuff wasn't hysterically funny, but it's just like, okay, I get it. I mean, I don't want to sound preachy. Like,
no, you're
hell. I'll tell you the dirtiest jokes in the world.
No, you're right.
But when people are paying money to see it, see my show, that's not what they want to see.
Well, you're exactly right, and I have more than a few comedy friends who ascribe to the idea that you can write the dirty ones first because they're the easiest to get out of the way, and then
they're right.
You get to the clean stuff. So.
And it's funny because, like, when I used to listen to Richard Pryor, I never really considered him dirty because that was just his lifestyle. That was his life. And he grew up, what I consider dirty is when I see someone that's like, that I know for a fact, like went to La Cañada High School in Pasadena and had this silver spoon life, and he's up there swearing and cussing about how awful his life was. I'm like, all right, now you're just being dirty. This has nothing to do with what you did.
Yeah, and it has to have a point, otherwise it's just hollow and unfunny, just not
right.
Good.
I mean, and it's fun because I get people come up to me who I remember this special I taped. There was a guy who came up, dude. He was tatted all over his face. He had piercings, and he goes, man. He goes, I just want you to know something. He goes, I appreciate you keep it clean and family. We're going, what? And but it's like it's like my wife and I host a celebrity golf tournament.
Yeah.
In Austin, and it's for the National Paralysis Foundation.
Yes.
And there's a lot of ex-NFL guys there. And we'll do a comedy show. And I always tell these comedians, look, you're playing golf with these football players during the day. That isn't the audience that's coming to see the show that night. So don't think you can just get up there and tell your golf course stories to this audience because they're not the same group.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good way to put it and a very good example. And I guess we'll lead into that with that perfectly leads into our final question that I love to ask all of our guests, which is, what do you want to see from comedy? More than just keeping it clean and getting more of that. How will comedy survive? What should the young comics do coming up?
Wow. God. That's my answer is going to sound very broad because I think I think we're missing out by seeing the family sitcom on TV anymore. Mm-hmm. They're not hiring great funny writers anymore. It's almost like when I was doing my show, it seemed like they would write a joke and then try to write a show around it. Yeah. As opposed to writing a show and inserting really good jokes in the show, which is what I think the old sitcoms used to do. But as far as stand-up, I'd like to see it come back. I'd like to see the plethora of comedy clubs and places you can go, and it's a nice venue, like a nice club. It's not just some pizza place that the guy slaps up a microphone on a fake brick wall, and and I got to sit there and listen to guys who don't have an act. Yeah, I love comedy. I really like to see comedy get back to the '80s when it was, there was, stand-up Spotlight, and there was, Comic Strip Live, and shows that gave me my start. People got to see you on TV, and it's like even the talk shows now, like the Tonight Show and the Late Show. You rarely see comedians on there. Yeah. And I think part of it is because they aren't sure that these guys are going to be able to do it. Yeah. It was like, I remember Carson always had comics on because the thing with Carson was he knew it was his show, and he would let you be the star for that 5 minutes. Yeah. I find that some of these hosts these days, it seems like they're more concerned about them being funny than letting you do your thing. Yeah. And so I'd like to see comics more on TV now. doing, because there's venues out there. It's just, I don't know why they're doing it, but I hope that they get back to it. Everything's cyclical, so I hope that in the comedy world that, we see the comedy clubs start popping up again and people making it a date to come out to see those shows. And, you see a comic on a show and try to do, to do his stuff on a Jimmy Kimmel or, a late night or the Tonight Show, because, Letterman used to have him on, but now he's done.
Yeah. I think the only one really doing that is Conan. Conan likes to have a variety of music and comedy guests.
Right.
And it's
which, now, here's a prime example. They wouldn't let me on Conan.
What?
They wouldn't let me on Conan O'Brien show. They said, we don't think you're his style. Now, there's where you have the problem.
That's dumb.
You have somebody who's booking, who doesn't really, they just go, I don't know, it's that country. I still fight that country stuff.
Well, yeah, and I didn't mean to associate you in any negative way.
No. You were right on it. Listen, that's where I got my roots, and that's where I got my start. But it's my point is that people are so closed-minded that they don't think. Like I was saying, well, watch my latest special. Tell me what's country about it.
Yeah.
And by the way, when you got 1.5 million to 2 million viewers, Facebook followers, you're doing something right.
Yeah. You certainly have the fan base out there. But that's shocking that they wouldn't let you do it, because Conan, you don't find raunchy comedians on Conan. You find smart kind of, what you are on Conan. So
when the guy that's the Tonight Show host now is
Fallon.
I haven't seen your
Fallon.
Yeah. When he had his show, they weren't going to let me on. And then I was at the Chicago Comedy Festival, and he saw my set. I said, "Why don't you ever do the show?" And I go, "Dude, we've tried to do your show. They won't let me on." He goes, "What?" So a lot of these hosts don't ever see,
Yeah.
unless they go, "Hey, I want to get Bill Engvall on this show." It's like, and I went and did his show, and we had a great time together. He goes, "That was great." Same with the British guy.
The guy on after Colbert now.
He's got a game. He's got a game show now. I'm
blanking
I just
too.
did his game show too. Anyway, but it was the same thing there. It's like, I finally got on his show, and he goes, "You come back anytime."
Wow. Yeah, that's.
But so I think a lot of it's ego with the bookers too. They want to know that they discovered it.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm also not ignorant. I know they're looking for the new young, hot talent. Which made me laugh, because when I was in when Ron White and I were at the Montreal Comedy Festival years ago, guy wrote an article that I still have on my wall. It says, while TV's up here looking for the young, new, hot talent, the only people making any real noise are the old guys, Bill Engvall and Ron White.
Well, it's just important to have you guys doing it, and I think you could do just as well on television as you did, in the first decade.
I could, but it's gonna be. And of course the other thing is, like, if I hit some hot show or got some part in a movie, boy, they'd be all over me. Hey, we always wanted you on the show. It's like, okay.
Well, you were a great game show host too. I loved Lingo. I mean, I loved the Chuck Wooler.
That was fun. I would have loved to have done that more. That was fun to do.
Yeah, it's a shame. GSN, they've had some trouble with originals and stuff, but I loved it. It really was great, and I wish it would have continued too. But the thing with GSN is I haven't seen an original of theirs last more than a couple seasons anyway. So, but it was great. So, well, Bill Engvall, thank you so much. You were absolutely fantastic. It was a delight to talk to you.
Well, Matt, I thank you, and I'm happy to say you're my first podcast.
Oh, wow. Thank you. This is great. I'm very honored. Thank you.
Hey, by the way, great questions, and I'd love to do it again whenever you want.
Thank you, Bill. What an honor. I wish you all the best with all of your tour dates, which our listeners can find at billengvall.com. That's it for us today, and tomorrow we got Joel Hodgson. And if you're listening to this after the real-time airing of all of these different pre-recorded episodes, just go ahead and click on that link for Joel. You will not be disappointed. In the meantime, you can find all you need to know about Talk for Two by going to our website, talk4spellout2.com. Reach out by emailing talkfortwocast, that's talk4twocast, @gmail.com. And find our group or like us on Facebook by searching for Talk for Two. Tweet us and about us using @ and hashtag Talk for Two. Signing off for Talk for Two, I'm Matt Bailey, reminding everyone out there to keep talking for two.
You can hear more show business interviews with the stars at talkfor2.com, where you'll also find one-of-a-kind products to improve your own show. That's talk, the number 4, TWO.com.